Welcome, fifth grade parents. This is Eric Latinsky, and I'm still the principal for a while longer, but I'll be the superintendent on July 1st. I'm currently starting the process of finding and hiring your new Rhinebeck Middle School principal for your soon-to-be sixth graders. Here are some important things about our middle school. First of all, you're transitioning from an elementary environment into a secondary environment. So at FE Bellows, it's a beautiful building, looks very much like a school. Elementary teachers, most of the time the kids spend in the whole day in one classroom with one core teacher. They get an elementary level of assistance. And what we mean by that is, they're really still learning how to be students. And they require a certain amount of tending and care and nurturing still because they're really very young. Report cards, you get a pretty straightforward 1, 2, 3, or 4 with some subcategories. And there are fewer extracurricular activities. Now, despite the differences you'll find in the middle school, both schools have highly qualified teachers who definitely care about their children. And all of our schools are safe. At the middle school, on the other hand, what you're going to find is that there's going to be different teachers for each subject. That is probably one of the biggest things to transition to. It's a physical activity for the kids, getting to each classroom. It's an organizational change for parents, because if you think about the difference in communication between you and one teacher and you and many teachers, that tends to be one of the biggest points of transition. There's an increased level of responsibility. Yes, they're still children, but the next step from the middle school is passing them off to Dr. Wilson in high school. So it's definitely a step up to a secondary mode of instruction. Grades are on a 100% scale. So there's a lot more variation. There's more extracurricular opportunities, whether there are athletes in your family, or thespians, or if you like music. And then, of course, we have high school students on campus. So the typical thing that the kids see is that they are the big kids on campus at Bellows, or any other school district. It's really the same thing. They come to the bigger campus, and the children are larger. So some of the eighth graders are heavier and taller than I am. And we, of course, have high school students that are driving. But the one thing I can say is that our high school students were once transitioning 5 into 6 middle school students, and they're very good with our middle school kids. So we have a bell schedule. We are a 6 through 12 integrated campus. It's a distinct middle school and a distinct high school, but we share a lot of staffing. I probably only have about 20 dedicated middle school teachers. Our whole foreign language department, for example, is shared. Our special educators, shared. PE, health, a lot of our specials, shared. So the whole building is integrated. So top to bottom, we have a 9-period bell schedule. Your middle school children will use periods 2 through 9. So the first academic period of their day will be that 8:33 period. They're usually about 43 minutes long, with 3 minutes passing in between. So we've highlighted some particular periods in red. So first of all, period 1, that is an instructional period for some high school students. Some high school students don't come in until period 2. Some come in during period 1. Homeroom. Homeroom is not necessarily the group of children that your student is going to be with all day. As you can see, it's only a 10-minute period of time. And the whole purpose of homeroom is to take attendance and to provide announcements. And then they move on. So the term homeroom means something a little bit different up here. Period 5 is in red. That's lunch. So students get lunch during a regular period of the day. My 8th graders, for example, eat period 6. 7th graders eat period 7. High school, it's really by schedule, it's not by grade. And then, of course, period 9, you see at the end of the day, it's a little shorter than the normal periods because we have a kind of a staggered dismissal to help ease traffic. So our core subjects, not next year, but the year after, New York transitions to the next generation standards in English and math. But standards are standards. And what we do is we focus on things like reading comprehension, writing, vocabulary, and grammar. What you see here on the next few slides are a series of staff members that are, some general education, some special education. Some of them will do a core subject, and they'll do some specials. But these are just some faces to help introduce you. So this is our sixth grade English teachers. Similarly, sixth grade math. Everything gets a little more serious. Fractions, decimals, percents. Personally, I think it was when my children got into eighth grade that I stopped being able to help them effectively in their math homework. It kind of hits everybody differently, but it starts to get a little more serious. Science. We're very excited. A little later in the presentation, we'll show you our new STEAM wing. But one of the advantages of the STEAM wing, which is really going to be a high school space, is that I'm going to inherit some really good science space up here, which is very exciting. So about 1 year after your kids get to the middle school, we'll be able to move into some larger, real dedicated science places. So sixth grade science, it's a lot of body systems, plants and animals, and of course, concentrations on scientific method and measurements. Social studies. Social studies is less linear than other subjects. Sometimes it's based on topics. So for example, sixth grade social studies focuses on ancient civilizations, Greece and Rome, and Asia, for example, Egypt, whereas seventh and eighth grade are US history. And then ninth and 10th grade, it goes back to global studies. So it's a little less linear. Additionally, we have English as a new language services. That's Miss Cohen, bottom right. We do both push-ins and pull-outs, just like at FE Bellows. And we have either special class or integrated co-taught classes for students with IEPs. And of course, AIS, Academic Intervention Service, that's a general education function for any student that is in need of additional math or ELA support. World languages, we offer 3, French, Italian, and Spanish. And your children will be soon offered a choice between those 3. So our language starts as an everyday full credit course in grade 7. In the 6th grade, it's every other day. So it's a half credit. Focuses a lot on vocabulary and culture. It's a great introduction for the full course. By the end of 8th grade, students will have earned their first high school credit, and that's in language. Our specials. Our specials run every other day, and the ones you see here will run on a trimester basis with the exception of physical education. So you see we have creative writing, art, and music. And again, that's every other day for 1/3 of the year. And then phys ed, we're very excited. Another thing I'm going to be able to talk about is our new gymnasium. That'll be open in September for you. Mini courses. This is our way of offering some important but particular things for your students throughout the day using our Bell schedule. So research technology, our libraries today are not what you and I remember when we were in school. There are simply fewer books and there's more technology. So how to navigate research tools is critical. Coding, knowing your way around a computer program, and knowing how things function. And then, of course, character education. One of the key aspects of middle school is the fact that your children are going through an array of transitions at different times. So all our 6th graders are coming in kind of in different places. So learning how to all play together in the sandbox as civil friends is important. And usually we end the day with flex. A flex is a way of taking because there are fewer state requirements in grade 6 as opposed to grade 7 and up. So with that extra time, we give the kids things that they may not get or we don't do as much these days. So, geography, for example, you see that the compass rose in the lower left. How to read an analog clock. If the clock isn't digital, do your children know how to tell time? Cursive writing. And then, of course, after a long hiatus, reintroduced this year, it's our DARE program in conjunction with our Village of Mamaroneck Police Department. So, getting back to the lunch, a favorite time for most students in school. We've included two kinds of pictures here: the right now and the how it usually is. So in the lower right, you see a circular table. They usually hold about 8 kids. That's what we normally have. The picture in the middle, you can see our 6-foot spaced single chairs. So as our pandemic progresses and as we get different guidance, I really hope to make the transition back to that communal table as soon as we can. Exactly how it will look in September, I can't tell you that right now, but we will as soon as we can. So this is one regular period in the day. Students can bring their lunch or buy their lunch. They can put money on their card, kind of like a debit card, or they give the cashier their number, and you can monitor the accounts. When they're done with eating, they can go outside. Some students spend 5 minutes eating and then go play. Others just like to hang out and relax talking with friends. Here are pictures of our serving area. So usually if you're buying, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to come to our serving area. I would have no problem eating in our dining hall every day. We have hot food, prepared meals, sandwiches, salads, and a full deli. And we also serve breakfast. Lockers. Now, lockers are going to be well taller than your children. They're pretty big spaces. This is the only personal space that they have in the entire building. So we encourage the students to tend that space and to take care of it. And the first step of that is securing the space. So on the left-hand side, you see locks that work. On the right-hand side, you'll see locks that do not work. Now, you will be tempted if you have a child that has difficulty with the rotary dial on the master lock. I don't work for master lock. I don't get a kickback, but they work best. I need bolt cutters to get the master lock off. Nothing gets taken from a locker if it's properly secured. Sometimes students have difficulty with those. You have to practice. You have to get the lock in the spring and put it on the fridge. And if they want to eat, they'll figure out how to do that. The ones on the right, the ones on top, they break. I could break those with a textbook. They're clunky. They're hard to get on and off the locker. The ones on the bottom, beware. The bar is so small, I can lift the locker anyway, even with that lock unlocked. So master locks are best. Keys do work if you really need to, but a key is something to lose. Here's one of our important people, Mr. Ricketts. Mr. Ernie Ricketts is a retired Mamaroneck police officer, youth officer, and he is currently our head of security. So we have security systems that you're probably familiar with pre-pandemic when you were allowed in school, typing your name in the lobby guard. We have a security system where we can lock our doors remotely. Our locks are timed so that during the bulk of the day, they're all locked. We have extensive camera systems. Right now, we have 144 district-wide, and we're adding more. All of our staff requires ID cards to get in. We have call buttons in every classrooms, and our staff is well drilled. Out in my front office, the middle school secretary, Mrs. Elizabeth Houghton. She's going to be a very important person. If there's any kind of question that you have and you don't know who to ask, call her and she'll direct you accordingly. Some other key people: Mrs. Costello, our middle school, high school librarian, and our district media specialist. Ms. Elisa Brilli is our school psychologist. Ms. Dolores Ayaso is our attendance clerk. If your child's going to be sick, she's going to be the one that you're going to call. Mrs. Julie Ionella, she's our athletic secretary. She works out at the current gym. And Miss Mahmood, she is our nurse. And she's been busy, as all our nurses, swabbing nostrils this year, making sure our surveillance testing is working well. So our capital project, as I said, the new middle school gymnasium, and it's not just the new gym, it's the middle school gym. So the high school will have the old gymnasium, which you're probably familiar with if you've ever been on our campus. If you drive out toward the old gym or our fields, right in front of the old gym, you will see the new middle school gymnasium. That is scheduled to be operational for September of 2021. So we're very excited about that, because not only is it a new facility, but what it's going to do is it's going to help our scheduling. So instead of having, if you think about the existing gym, that's one classroom for 7 grades. So we now double that. So it's going to increase our scheduling options and make sure that students have the ability to take the courses they need, because we won't be making concessions. Below, you see our STEAM wing. So that view is kind of from the direction of the gymnasium, kind of looking toward Hornage Road. And probably in the top left of that photograph, of the lower photograph, that's where our dining hall is. So this is as you drive around the corner, you're going to see the STEAM wing. It's 8 new classrooms, all science oriented. Our high school will move into there. That will become operational sometime next year, but full-time definitely the year after. And again, what that's going to do is that's going to free up existing science space at this end of the building for your middle school students. So we're very excited about our capital project.
Hi, my name is Megan Lawler, and I'm the 6th grade counselor here at the middle school. And I'd like to talk to you today a little bit about the role of a school counselor, since that is something that is new to your students this year. And I'd also like to talk to you about some of the general transitions and changes that your children will be going through. So a lot of what school counselors do here in Rhinebeck are school-wide, what we call Tier 1 interventions. They are services and approaches and programs that are for all students. So the last thing that I want you to think is that if your child, spends a period with me, or you hear about us, spending some time together, that your child did something wrong or is in trouble, or that someone thinks there's something wrong with your child. I think that's how it used to be back when I was in middle school. I don't even remember that my school had a middle school counselor. But certainly the counselor wasn't someone who worked with everyone. But here in Rhinebeck, the counselors, starting in grade 6 and going all the way through high school, work with all of our students throughout their time here. So it's going to start very soon. In 2 weeks, I'm going to be visiting Bellows classrooms and starting my orientation process with the 6th graders. And that's going to be the first way that I get to know them. I'm also going to speak with their teachers before the end of the school year to kind of, get a little bit of information about each of the students as we're placing classes and things like that. I also work with the 6th graders, as Dr. Latinsky said, in the mini course of character education, which is where we really learn to work together as a community and to be a school community. Our school has embraced Ruler, which I know you're familiar with from Bellows as well. We will be focusing next year on the 3rd part of the Ruler program, which is the blueprint and the meta moment. So your 6th graders will get a lot of experience with that next year. Bullying prevention programs are built into a lot of what we do. Certainly the Ruler approach helps to lower and eliminate bullying. We're also very versed in the Alveus bullying prevention program, which is something that we've used and adapted to our school needs, as well as character education lessons. We work with English teachers, social studies teachers, things like that. We have had the honor of being a No Place for Hate school. This is our 8th year running as a Gold Star school. The Anti-Defamation League has sponsored a program for schools where we are encouraged to teach children, to recognize hateful behavior, bullying behavior when they see it, and how to stand up as allies. And the time that we dedicate to that is really exciting, and that again is a school-wide program. The counselors offer lunchtime groups. In pre-COVID times, we had lunch bunches weekly for boys and girls. It's a great way for them to get to know each other, to get to know me in a completely different way, not in a classroom. Our school has for many years done an Olympics program, which is a great spirit building event, and it helps students to work together. They work with students across the grade levels. And over the years, we do a lot of classroom presentations, and then in a blink of an eye, your students will be getting ready to move down the hall to the high school. So they will be working on high school planning and transition in their 8th grade years. We also offer individualized team and parent meetings. Anytime an issue presents itself, small group counseling or individual counseling. All of those things, kind of make up the bones of our guidance program and counseling services. But it is very fluid, and we're here to address the needs of students as they come up. Thank you. So I spoke with our 6th graders in Character Ed a few weeks ago, and I thought it would be interesting for the parents to see what the kids last year were worried about when they were coming to the middle school, or what did they wish they knew. So they were most worried about having a lot of different teachers and switching classes and the amount of work and how to manage the work. And getting around the building. Those were sort of the big ones. And I just wanted to assure you that we spend a lot of time at the beginning of the school year helping the students find their way around. They get used to all of their teachers. We use flex time at the beginning to make sure they have everything in their agenda. So the things that they're most worried about, we also have supports built in already. What no one mentioned, but I think is big, is who to sit with at lunch on that first day. And I just wanted to let you know that the 6th grade class eats together. So even if they don't see their student, their friends at any other time, assuming that we're able to go back to our pre-COVID regulations, the whole grade eats together. So they will have someone that they know there with them. And then I asked them what they liked most about middle school, and big shock, they like the social part. They like being able to get up and move in between classes. They like that even if one friend isn't in their music class, they might be in their math class or their English class. The moving around is a big thing. Having a different teacher each period. So I think all of those things help to make the 6th graders feel more mature and, more comfortable here once they experience it. And then something that I'm working into my presentation to your children in a few weeks is what our current 6th graders wish they knew before they started the middle school. And that involved the typical things like make sure you do your homework, make sure you study, that there might be a little more work than they thought, excuse me, and how to get around the building, where classes are. And those are things that I will be reassuring them that we'll be working to help them get their way around those first few days, first few weeks. There's really a range in middle school. Some kids come in on the first day and they somehow know where everything is. Other kids have a sense of direction like me, and it might take them 2-3 weeks to kind of really get their way around. We've dealt with all of it. We know how to help all of the kids, no matter where they are on that continuum, find their way and find comfort here in the middle school. This is just a cartoon that I love because it kind of shows all the millions of things that are going on in their brain. And you can see the little tiny pieces for memory, for chores and homework. But things like, friends are very important. And, as they move up through middle school, that love lobe takes a larger part of their brain. Unfortunately, it's not for us as their parents. But the reason that I want to talk about the brain for just a second, and I'm certainly not a scientist, but there are 2 times in your child's life when their brain changes massively. The first is from birth to 3. And if you think back to those days from when they went from being a, teeny tiny lump, dependent on you for everything, to a preschooler who can, talk and communicate and walk around and make their needs known. That was a huge jump. The jump you're about to see is incredibly similar. They grow, they become more independent. And a lot of times when we look at them and wonder, what were you thinking when they do something as parents? The reason is that they really weren't yet, because the prefrontal cortex develops as they get older. That's the part that helps you make really good decisions. So they need our support and our scaffolding with that. So a few things to remember as your child comes into the middle school. The most important thing to them, for 90+% of the students, becomes their social world, whether that's real life friends, TikTok friends, anywhere in between. It goes from having us as their parents be kind of their beacon, their guiding light, to their social group being their guiding light. So that's important for us as parents to, respect, but to keep an eye on as well. The other thing is that new peer groups are established, sometimes monthly, daily, it might seem like. And I've learned, I have a student who's going into 9th grade and a child who's going to 8th grade next year. So I've kind of watched it from both ends now. And a really important thing that I've noticed is that if my child gets in an argument with someone, my job is to stay out of it and keep my mouth shut, because there's a very good chance that they'll be best friends again in 2 weeks. And my child will be more upset with me that I've said something and taken their side against, their friend that they're now best friends with again. So we need to kind of keep a balance as parents in terms of trying to stay as neutral as we can. Your child needs you so much right now, but they will do everything in their power to keep you from knowing that. I have found that in schools, when I do projects with students, when we have something that's occupying our hands and we're not making eye contact with each other, that's when some of our absolute best counseling sessions happen. With my own children, I have found the car to be the place of all secrets revealed. To have that time and to be, not staring at each other, without distractions, that's where they open up. And to try to pay attention to both their verbal and nonverbal communication is important. I'd like to, it's so hard as parents because we want to solve everything for our children. We want, them to be happy. We want everything to be fixed. When we rush in and take that opportunity away from them to try to fix it themselves, we're kind of hurting them in 2 ways. The first is that they don't learn how to solve it themselves. But the second, and maybe the more important way that we're harming them, is that whether we mean to or not, we're giving them the message that we don't think they can solve it themselves. And of course, there are some really big issues that we wouldn't expect a child to solve on their own. But the smaller things, the day-to-day things, we want to instill them with the confidence and the skills to be able to do that as they move forward. So please, you know, a lot of parents say to me, oh, they're in middle school. I don't need to check in with them anymore. You know, I let them have middle school, you know, I let them have a little more freedom. And it is all about freedom, but it's about a little bit of freedom at a time. So some things you can do that are really helpful are to check in daily with your homework assignments. Your child's going to tell you that they remember all of their assignments and that they're all on Google Classroom anyway, but we're going to ask them to use the agenda. And if you could support us in that, that would be really helpful, because then you have all the assignments in one place. But do check Google Classroom and join Parent Portal so you can check that regularly. If possible, provide a homework space at home. There will need a little bit more time, not a ton, but a little bit more time for homework next year. So there might be some activities that need to be rearranged or minimized. Check in on what that binder and book bag look like. You know, depending on how brave you are, some people do it weekly, some people do it a little more often or a little less often. You know, that'll depend on what your child needs as well. We hope to have Steps for Success in September, and that's set up just for sixth graders so that they can get a little bit of extra help kind of getting organized and getting their homework started. So think about leaving some time in their schedule for that. And then after the first marking period, for kids who really struggle, we will have Extended Day, which is an after-school homework program for the kids who need it. And the little cartoon here really kind of illustrates what Dr. Latinsky was saying about all of the kids being at very different places. You know, we have lots of caterpillars, some butterflies, and everybody in between. And part of middle school is everyone just finding their place. And that's what we're here to help with. So communication is key in middle school. And I certainly do not know the answer to every question that you may have. But if you don't know who to ask, please ask me, and then I will get that answer for you, or I will find out who the person for you to discuss anything would be. You know, our phones still work. You know, we tend to be an email kind of society, but you can certainly still call and have a phone conversation. In fact, I suggest that for anything that goes on for longer than, say, a paragraph in an email. If you find yourself redrafting the email, or it goes on to the point where you need to scroll, it might be better if that's a phone call than an email. And then in sixth grade, we do have parent conferences. They're not set up the way they are in Bellows, where every parent has a parent conference. They are set up as needed. So if the teachers notice a concern, we reach out to you and we'll invite you to a conference. And if you have a concern or a worry or something that you'd like to talk about, you're more than welcome to contact us to have a conference. This year, we've done them all during Google Meets. In the past, they've been face-to-face. We'll see as we move forward kind of what works best for everyone, you know, as we move through the pandemic. Piece of advice, please label everything. You will be amazed at what middle schoolers can lose. You know, the times that I have found one shoe in the hallway boggles my mind, but it is something that, you know, kids can lose anything. And if they have their name on it, it's so easy to get it back to them. If not, we do have lost and founds. And as you can see on this table, a few times each year, we put everything out and offer it to children to look through before we donate whatever's not claimed. But please ask your, you know, label everything that's important to your child that you would want to get back. I'm going to be visiting Bellows in the next few weeks, each class individually. And then towards the beginning of the school year, the end of the summer, generally the week before we return to school, I will host some sort of activity here in the middle school. Depending on our COVID regulations, it will either be small group tours, or it will be a Bagels and Locks Day where the kids can actually get their lockers. But we'll see how that, you know, progresses as we see what the COVID regulations are like. But there will be a time for your kids to come here with or without you, depending on what your preference is, to tour the school and see where they'll be going those first days. And then in September, we'll have an open house.
And then we all go home. So I'd like to conclude with a brief video. So normally what would happen is the presentation that you just saw, it would be in person and it would be in our dining hall. At the conclusion of the presentation, or at this stage right now, we would then walk the building so that you can get a feel for the physical environment and see where your kids are going to be going to school every day. So instead, we have created a video. Mr. Golden, one of our teachers here, has created this, so I can kind of narrate and explain the layout. So what you're looking at here is the administration building would be right behind me, and you're looking out at Hornage Road. You see the rock, quote unquote, on the right hand side. This is where you're going to drop your children off. So keep in mind that our morning activities are varied, and we're all scrambling around. But when you get here, you are going to be one of over 100 getting your kids to school. So we encourage walking and bike riding in good weather or bad. Kids are tougher than we expect. I think COVID has proved that. They've proved that to us. But if you're going to drop your child off, the child should be on the passenger side of the car. That's where the curb is. Their book bag should be with them, not like in the trunk or in a different place in the car. Instructions, conversations, last minute instructions, they should happen beforehand so that when you get to the curb, they get out, because there's 100 more of you in line behind. So we want to move that along. So that's our front entrance. So your children are going to walk down our pathway. You see bike racks on the left. Like I said, I highly encourage bike riding. We have students that ride here in February in the snow. We don't close the bike racks. This is the lobby guard security system that I mentioned. So this vestibule is like an airlock. This inner door is always closed. This is our main hall. And here's the view into my office. So Ms. Houghton sits right on the right-hand side. And here's our sixth grade wing. Now, I will say this, because of COVID, we're not at our prettiest right now. So normally it's a very colorful space, but because of the electrostatic sprayers, which destroy paper, we have nothing hanging on our bulletin boards. You'll also see some like shields in the halls and things. But this is our sixth grade wing. Sixth grade wing is a great space, not only because it is air conditioned, but it's kind of self-contained. So yes, your students are going to come here and the bell's going to ring and they're going to move from class to class, but they do it mostly in that wing. So they get the feel of moving around while staying kind of contained in the wing. So we move out to the main hallway. This is a corridor. All of our corridors are lettered. And you can see the lockers on either side. The sixth grade wing, over the years, it was built as an open space. It's too narrow for lockers, so your students' lockers are going to be out here. You see those shields I mentioned on the left-hand side. This is our guidance suite. So that was Miss Chu's office. She handles grades 7 and 8. Miss Lawler, our community resource, is here on the left. Okay, very centrally located, very easy to find. So we're looking down a corridor toward the high school. We're going to make a left right now, down B corridor. So to my right is the central core of the building, where the music department, the performing arts center, library, all that's in the middle. Those are the interior spaces. On the left-hand side, those are where most of our middle school science classes are. Not sixth grade, though. Sixth grade is in the wing. And these are also high school science classrooms. So these are the rooms that I was mentioning before that we will inherit. You can see our floor markings because of COVID. There are some things that we may wind up keeping. when the pandemic's over. So we'll look at things like one-way traffic. There's Ms. Barilli's office. She's our school psychologist. There's Mr. Ricketts. On the left is what we call our B lab. It's one of the few computer labs. It's probably the only computer lab we have left in the building. Odd enough to say, computer labs like that are more or less obsolete. So all your children have one-to-one Chromebooks. They will have that here. So we're going down C corridor. If you've ever been to the Performing Arts Center or come in the front where our library is, this is on the opposite side of the building, parallel to that. So this is behind the stage, what we call our garden entrance. Now, what you're looking at there are one of our many screening stations. You're familiar with that from Bellows, the temperature checks. On the right, you see our computer carts, which we use to push around the building. They've been decommissioned to take the computers out and give each child a Chromebook. So we're cutting through our library. When the building was built, this was the gymnasium, which is why you have the high ceiling. This is the only two-story space in the building. Right now, you can see it's set up as our high school lunch space. So as you would see in the dining hall, these are 6 feet apart, individual chairs. There's those no place for hate banners that Mrs. Lawler had mentioned. And upstairs is where our world language department works. Our library is open in the morning and in the afternoon, and also at lunch. So if a student has work to do or just wants to go hang out, they can get a library pass from their homeroom teacher and then go to the library during lunch. So we're back out into A corridor. Okay, we're really getting into the high school end of the building. Our special services office is here on the right. More interior space on the left, which is where some of our high school science classes are currently, these rooms on the left. Most of the building's offices are on this end of the building. The only member of our clerical staff at this end of the building is Mrs. Houghton. So down at this end of the building, this is the high school office. The nurse's office is right there on the left, very easily accessible. The attendance office. So here's D. Again, this is parallel to B corridor, where the music rooms and the science rooms were. When we get to the end of D, you make a right into the dining hall. We don't have a cafeteria. We have a dining hall. It's a wonderful space. It's big and bright. And as I said, I would have no problem eating meals here 5 days a week. So as you can see here, it's a big space. Currently, the desks are set up in single rows. Students come in. This is where the salad bar, pasta station, prepared sandwiches, hot food, meal of the day, and our deli. So this is normally where we would have had our presentation tonight and then started the tour and headed back down the building. So I want to thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, so you've met me, use me while you got me. You've got Mrs. Lawler. Okay, she's going to be someone that's going to be critically important for you in acclimating your children to our school. So you will see her, or your children will see her at Bellows. She works very closely with our 5th grade staff. We will have opportunities to come tour our building in August. And we are really excited to meet your children here in September of 21. Thank you very much for joining us. Goodbye.